At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Rapid Deploy is the CAD of the future. It's cloud-aided dispatch, not dinosaur computer-aided dispatch that looks like it was built in the 1980s. Rapid Deploy's cloud-native CAD, mapping, and analytics increase situational awareness for call takers, dispatchers, and responders. Rapid Deploy is taking public safety by storm. It's fast and easy to deploy, with implementation in days, not years. It's affordable for all agencies of all sizes. Rich in features, functionality, and data, it's also reliable and secure as we use Microsoft Azure Government Cloud. Go to rapiddeploy.com to learn more.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be episode 391 of Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy, and this is going to be an InDigital exclusive episode. Welcome back, everyone. We're a few weeks now past Dare to Be Great 3. People are still registering and checking out all of the sessions. It was 47 sessions worth of just greatness that's there. So you've got 3 different Dare to Be Great virtual conferences that are up there and available still for everyone to register. I believe now we have surpassed a total from the 3 of 10,000 attendees. And that's 10,000 attendees from around the world. Just amazing. Thank you all for the job that you do and for making Dare to Be Great such a success. Again, you can go to actually Crowdcast. You can go to Crowdcast and you can look up Within the Trenches Media, and you will find all of the virtual events that we have been part of. But of course, again, Dare to Be Great 3 is the most recent one that is out there, and people are registering up. You can actually go to withinthetrenches.net/conference, and you can see all the information on there. You can download the guide. You can see every speaker that was there, whether it was a conference speaker or a sponsor speaker, and see everything that they talked about. Also, check out their websites. By supporting our sponsors, you also support us, because we wouldn't be able to do everything that we do without them. So thank you all again very much. Make sure to check those out. For patrons, thank you again, to patrons as always for everything. Same way with the sponsors. For patrons, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without all of you. So thank you for the support. And of course, all of you who are watching, listening, supporting, and sharing. If you are looking for any bonus content, you can check us out. And that is patreon.com/WTT podcast. And we have got audio versions, actually, of the Dispatchers Roundtable and Open Mic that are going to go out exclusively to patrons only. And so the Dispatchers Roundtable and Open Mic Live, those are live broadcasts that we do. Open Mic Live is where dispatchers come on and share their funny 911 stories. and I just go through the comments and I'm reading them. Sometimes I have guests. Sometimes my mom is in the audience, and it's funny because there's some stuff that I definitely would not want to read in front of my mom because it's my mom. I'm 40 years old. I'm a grown ass man, but I have respect for my mom. So I wouldn't say some of that stuff. So I have to find different ways to say it and still make it funny. But either way, open mic live, funny stuff. That is going to start out with the most recent episode that'll be audio, because there are 100 or so of those. I wouldn't be able to go all the way back and get all of those and post them up for patrons. So I'm going to start with the newest one. However, with the Dispatchers Roundtable, I've put out 21 rounds. So there's 21 episodes. I already went back, downloaded every single one, and I'll be putting the audio versions out 2 a week until we catch up. Then, of course, it'll be every time I do a roundtable, which is twice a month, 2 Wednesdays a month. I do the Dispatchers Roundtable. So that'll be out there as well. The Dispatchers Roundtable is just that, a roundtable discussion with panelists on different topics that deal with 911 dispatch. So that is an excellent one. Make sure to check those out as well. And the last thing right before I bring my guest on here is Navigator is coming up. If you are on the fence, if you have not checked it out, try. Make sure you do. If you have the opportunity, of course, navigator.emergencydispatch.org. That is put on annually by the IAD. And this year, once again, they are hosting Within the Trenches podcast. So we're going to be out there and not only doing the podcast in the expo hall and, giving access to what's going on there in live broadcast, but also recording episodes just like this. I'm going to be doing Imagine Listening. I'll be doing that session on the 13th as well as the 15th. And I will have the I Am 901 poker chips out there in Vegas. So if you share a story, whether it be out loud or written down so that I can read it for you, you'll get one of those one-of-a-kind poker chips on either one of those days. So make sure to check us out during that time as well. And, the IAD puts on just such a great conference in Navigator. There's so much to it, so many good sessions. And, of course, the networking alone is just amazing. And there's so much that you can get out of it. Their closing speaker this year is going to be Marley Matlin, and her credentials just reach so much. She is an amazing person, and she just has just an excellent story. Also has an app out there that shows the basics of sign language, so something to check out as well. I'm going to make sure to be there because I keep hearing about her closing session. So if you're going to be there, make sure to check it out. Again, it's navigator.emergencydispatch.org. And thank you again to the IAD for hosting the podcast, same way as in years past. We've developed a pretty good relationship in sharing each other's stuff, and they're hosting us again. And I can't thank you enough. So thank you so very much. And if you're going to be there, we'll see you there. I'll be in booth 412. That's booth 412. Now, my guest today, her name is Kathryn, and she is a shift supervisor at Baldwin County 911 out of Alabama, and she has been in this career for 19 years. So I'm about to bring her on and learn more about her, and also, kind of how technology has changed and everything, and kind of an inside look at what it was like during the time of, Hurricane Sally had hit out there. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It was a good weekend. Like there was a lot of stuff going on. It was super hot over here. I can't even imagine what it's like down where you're at though.
Oh yeah, it's definitely steaming.
And during even in October, when the Gulf Coast Conference is going on over there, it gets pretty warm. But if you're walking right by the water and stuff, that breeze that's coming in, it's so beautiful.
It is. It's worth it to live down here by the beach.
Yeah, and it's not that far. I always fly into Pensacola and then make the drive, and the drive is awesome as well. Then I pass the Floribama. And then go and see a lot of interesting folks walking by. I'm like, they're having a good time. I like this place. This is a good place.
You should come down when they have the mullet toss then.
Wait, what is this?
Yeah, the mullet toss. It's pretty. They all go out there and have themselves a good time afterwards. So you should try that during that time.
Okay.
Or-
So and you've been there then.
I've never actually done the mullet toss, but I have been there during the time whenever everyone else was participating.
So
But I participated. I'm not going to
Okay.
touch that.
Okay, hold on. Before we get started here and learning more about you, I got to know about this. What exactly does that entail? Like, what do you do? You're just picking
I
up.
guess the concept is to see how far you can throw, who can throw the farthest.
And it's a
You
mullet?
definitely try it. Yes.
What? Okay, I'm gonna have to
It
look
happens
this up.
Yes, it happens behind the Floribama.
Okay, this sounds like, yeah, I'm all about this now. I wasn't sure if I was gonna go this year, but I think I'm gonna go now for sure, and go and check it out. In years past, I have gone, with Indigital when I was working for them, and I've actually spoken at the conference, and not only for stuff that I was doing, but also as part of Indigital and showing some of the offerings and stuff for Texty and all with the state there. But the shrimp boil at the end, oh, man.
Yeah, that's nice too. And then whenever y'all are down, usually it's the shrimp festival too, isn't it?
Maybe.
Like in
Yeah.
Gulf Shores, this is right next to Orange Beach. Usually y'all have the shrimp fest that's going on. I don't know if you ever got to partake in that, but they got lots of arts and crafts and
Mhm.
booths set up, and it's pretty neat as well. That's where I usually end up going, is the shrimp fest.
Oh man. Okay, so for those who are watching and listening right now, if you get a chance during that time, it's in October. It's like the last, or no, the second week of October maybe, or something like that.
Yes, sir. But you'll
Yeah,
have to
so-
check out when the mullet toss is. I'm not for sure when that's at because, like I said, I've never participated. You may have to check with others on when that partakes.
Oh, I'm definitely going to do that. And also for those again who are watching and listening, that the whole conference is amazing to begin with, and everyone is so friendly there and everything. And but that last night that you're there and the seafood boil is going on, I remember one of my bosses and we were going head to head on plates, and I'm pretty sure he beat me out with like 5 plates and I had 4. But by the time we were done, like I didn't even want to look at anyone else's plate because I was kind of ashamed of myself.
They usually have pretty good food there, don't they?
Yes, yeah, and that's why, because I was ashamed that I had eaten so much. Like the food was amazing. We're just sitting there, just destroying like the corn and sausage and shrimp. And yeah, when we were done, I just thought, I'm disappointed in myself.
You
I
know,
really wasn't.
out of the past 18 years that I've worked, I've always worked during the conference. I've never actually gotten to go participate yet with the conference. I've usually been the one that's been working it, like at
Oh man.
the center. I've never gotten to go
Aw.
participate. It'll be neat
Well-
to get to go. I hope to get to go maybe this year, but
Well, I'm glad that you said all of this as well, because I'll have to make sure to say, hey, Dan, you should check out the episode. It was a really great episode, especially right in the beginning. Make sure to check it out in the beginning.
but yeah, say hint, hint. I would love to go.
Yeah, wink. That is excellent. It is definitely a good conference, and I hope you do get to go because it's a pretty good time. So as I mentioned in the beginning, 19 years you've been in this career. How did you get into dispatching to begin with?
Originally, I started looking for a job to try to help me get through college. I was going through and trying to get my teaching degree, and I thought that's what I wanted to do with my life, was to go down the career path of an elementary education teacher. But once I started here, I fell in love with it, and I completely. This was my calling. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. So I ended up I stopped my courses at school and came on full time, and I've been here ever since and couldn't imagine being anywhere else.
Oh, wow. So what was it like for you in the beginning then? And actually, do you come from a law enforcement background, or were you like just brand new coming into it, not knowing anything about it?
I was brand new. The only exposure I ever had, I worked at a hospital part-time as well. And I always thought it was so neat. The med units would come in. Of course, they had the radios on, and they're coming in, dropping off patients. And we had a scanner as well that we would listen to in the back, trying to give us a heads up when we got patients that were going to be coming in on night shift. And I would always hear those voices and thought, man, that's got to be the coolest job ever. And so one of the guys who worked on the med unit also worked up here. His name was David. And he was awesome. He helped me get a resume and everything together and an application, and I went ahead and turned it in. Believe it or not, it was a little over a year before I was able to ever get a job here. But once they called me and I started, it's never looked back. But I never even actually, like I said, worked in the field at all. So
so in that time, did you get to at least come in and sit down and see any of it? Or you just went off of the voices that you were hearing?
just the voices I was hearing over the scanner. I just thought that was just the coolest job to have ever. And I wanted to be able to say I'd done something like that. And so I just always thought it was interesting and never got to come in, sit down, view it. I filled out my paperwork, turned it in. A year later, they asked if I was still interested, and I was like, sure, and thought it would just get me through school. Came in and sat down. They put me right to work.
Oh, so do you remember getting that phone call and them asking you that? Like, what was that? What was that feeling? Was it like a scared, excited type thing, or just a shock, like out of the blue, they're calling me?
Well, actually, I thought it was a joke at first because I had been waiting for a year.
Right.
And honestly, I had done, had 3 part-time jobs and was going to school full-time. And they called me in between I was getting ready for one job from another. And I remember I was at my apartment and they called me. And like I said, I thought it was a joke. But then I talked to David. David was like, no, really, they want you to come in. Are you willing to do it? He said, if not, they're moving on to the next one. And I was like, yeah, I'll sign me up. I'll try it. And so I came in and they put me straight to work. And of course, our training back then was a little different than it is now, but we started right away.
It's funny to hear this a little bit, only because it was kind of the same for me when I first started. I applied, and then I had my interview, and I thought I screwed up because I hadn't heard from them forever. And then the chief of police shows up out of nowhere and asks me if I want the job, and I said yes, thinking maybe I'll start in a couple of days or I'll start next week, because it was towards the end of the week. And I started that night. and I went in, met my trainer, and then I went from there. But that was it. It was just, I went in, and there was training. It was a 40-hour beginner's course that I ended up doing a couple weeks later, but getting in there, jumped right in, and that's how they were doing it. So then for you, getting there and them putting you straight to work, like what was that like in the beginning? Then was it overwhelming? I mean, can you remember walking into the center and seeing everything? What was that like?
It was kind of like an awe experience, when you walk in and you're seeing all these people And of course, they're having to move quickly. They're answering phones, they're answering radios, and multitasking. And you kind of think to yourself, am I able to do this? But they took me on back, and they kind of, what's bad is I knew nothing about the area I lived in. I was one of those people who would call in, and if I ever had an emergency, I would have been messed up because I had nothing, no clue when it comes to the county where anything was located. And so they sat me down, trained me on the maps, and as soon as I got done with my map training with David, they put me right in dispatch, and it was one of those sink or swim kind of things, and they threw you in there with both feet.
And it is interesting, right? Like when you think about the beginning and
Mhm.
how you say you really didn't know a lot of the geography of where you live, but now, what is it like now? I bet you know, the cross streets, landmarks, and you probably tell other people too, know your surroundings.
Yes, of course, my husband is also in dispatch as well. And it's funny because we drill our kids all the time, when we're in the car. Now, where are we? What road are we on? That kind of thing. And so I'm the same way. Wherever I'm going, I'm looking for cross streets because you never know what will happen. It's kind of something you just put in the back of your mind. You just do it. But before I started here, I never would. It's a wonder I got from point A to point B.
Did you ever do any geography rides where you would just drive around? Like they would tell you, this is a certain landmark or this is a cross street, go find it because you're going to want to know about this because things happen there a lot.
Yes, sir. No, they never had us do anything like that, but it would be pretty awesome if we could do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we never did. We drilled when it come to, we had this lady that I worked with who was over our mapping, Miss Beth, and she drilled us relentlessly when it came to, she said, I want you to know when I met you and asked for directions, I want you to know how to get them from point A to point B. And I don't want you to tell me turn right. Don't tell me turn left. I want you to tell me north, south, east, west. She was a stickler for stuff like that. And so if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have had the mapping background that I did.
Do you ever find that you speak to maybe your friends and family the same way?
Yes.
I asked because I would do the same thing. Your mom?
She has not really a sense of direction, so
I feel you. Sorry, Mom. If you end up watching this, no, I know the same thing. But even, even if I was calling or speaking to somebody about, I don't know, a bill that I have, or I'm at the bank and something calls for phonetics. I mean, it doesn't really call for phonetics, but I do it anyway so that the person understands, and they usually look at me funny, like, oh, okay. Like I didn't know what M would be or something. I said, but it sounds like N. So that's why I give you the phonetic.
sure.
It just sticks with you, right?
It does. It does.
So, in your training, you end up learning all of this, and they, like you said, both feet at the same time. You're going in to do more. Was it phones first and then radios, or was it all phones and then you're just, you're there with the trainer and you're just kind of work through these calls as they come in?
They originally started us off on radio, practicing repeating the traffic back and forth. And after that, it was like documentation. You had to make sure you document everything that the units were advising, and in a timely manner too. It was trying to help practice your typing skills. And it followed up with call taking. They would have someone plugged up to you, and you would go in to the call originally with them listening to the call and listening to them give the pre-arrivals, follow through the EMD. And then once you felt like you had a kind of an idea of how to word it yourself, they would then throw you in and have you. Of course, they were still plugged up to us during that time. And basically, they'd follow through with us, making sure we're, dotting our I's, crossing our T's. And then after that, whenever you knew you were on your own, they unplugged from you and they would kind of go in from a different console and listen just to make sure you're okay. But if it got busy, sorry, better hope you handle it. It was a fast, quick. It's a quick pace. Of course, I had a really good trainer too, and so she was phenomenal. But she also was a very strict multitasker, and if she cracked that whip if you weren't moving fast enough for her.
I definitely remember that. I had a trainer, well, actually, a coworker after training, and I remember I was writing something down, and afterwards, she goes, "Why were you writing that?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "I went straight to my paper instead of typing it." I said, "It was a non-emergency anyway, so it's fine." And she goes, "Yeah, but if you do that often, you're going to end up doing it on a 911 call as well." And she goes, do I need to get the ruler out and smack your hand?"
What Sandy would do, she was such a little stickler for that. Oh my goodness, she would sit there and she'd be like, "Why are you writing it down?" So finally she took my notepad and my pen away from me. So that way I couldn't write nothing down. So I started sneaking little sticky notes. And I had this I would sit there and try to write where she couldn't see me. I was kind of trying to turn where she couldn't see with my little sticky notes. And she caught that. So she would come and take my sticky notes away from me. So she was dead set. You had to listen and remember it and then put it back onto the computer. So, but it hadn't been for her being so strict with me that I probably wouldn't have ever learned any of it.
Yeah, no, I was the same way. I definitely thanked all of them for that. But did you ever find that when you were training on radios that you were so, kind of nervous about what to say that you would kind of hang on almost every word of your trainer? And I say that because there would be sometimes someone would say something and I would say, "How do I say it?" or what should I say? And they would say 10-4. I'm like, "Oh, right. Okay. Yeah." And even something that small sometimes, I would hear an officer say something a different way. Like it was the same thing, but they just worded it different. And I would look over and they would say, "It's the same thing, just 10-4." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yes.
But I think it was because I wanted to really do a good job. So I wanted to make sure I was saying it the same way everyone else would say it, but I was overthinking it.
And see, I had a list. I had a little paper that I used to keep with me. I'd pull it out of my bag every time I sat on console, and it was a list of all of our 10 codes. And I kind of had to have that hidden from Sandy as well, because she ever caught me with that, she'd come take it away from me. So I had made copies, and so I had several copies. And so, but eventually, we learned it, and so it was kind of fun. She made training fun, but then she was very serious when it comes to her job. So it was fun trying to get one over on her, but you couldn't ever do it.
Right. Yeah. And, that's where that experience ends up coming in for them. They're like, no, you're not going to put one over me. So then when you get off of radios and then you go, over to phones, what was that difference then for you? Because now, you're on radios, of course, with all the officers that are out there, all those that are out there on the road, sergeants, lieutenants, whichever, just everyone there. And then now you're moving over to phones. And I don't think I asked this before, but how big is your center? Like how many people are working at the same time?
Well, when I first started here, we could do 3 people on and then 2. Like if one had to step out for a moment, 2 could stay on console. Now we have built up to, we have 7 on. And, if one steps away for a moment, that's fine. But during our peak hours, which is from like 10 o'clock till 10 p.m., we usually have 7 people on during the summertime. So it's grown substantially since the last time when I first started. Like we were just talking about that the other day, how I could remember when we sat around and there would just be 2 of us in dispatch. And now we're crying because we feel like 7's not enough, especially in some hours.
So then you move over to phones, and is it overwhelming? Like, because you've been on radios, you learn geography and everything else, but now you're coming over to phones to do something, different and all, and you're taking these emergency calls from people who are calling not at their greatest times, right? You've got your trainer there, and I'm sure you're connected by, the umbilical cord as you're listening, you're both right there. And even that, even just, jokingly, someone would be, I would be typing something in and someone would come up behind me and I would mess up on my typing and I would turn back and say, it's because you're watching me that I messed up on my typing here. But, now, you've got your trainer right there and you're taking these calls. And sometimes you want to look over to them and say, like, am I doing this right? Or, should I do this different? But you can't. Like, they're listening and you're just going. And if if there's something, then they tell you, of course, but it's all you. What was that like for you?
To me, the call taking wasn't that hard. It wasn't like with most people. Like, to me, it was the radio. I'm not gonna lie. To me, the radio was a little unnerving, knowing I'm talking to several people out there in scanner land that is hearing everything I'm saying when I'm talking to this one person on the phone. That was a little bit easier for me. I was able to handle that a little bit better. But to me, it was a lot easier. The radio was more intimidating, though, when it comes to if you mess up, everybody knows you messed up, and then they all call the center picking on you because you messed up. At least this one caller is not going to crucify me for saying something the wrong way or make fun of me for saying something the wrong way, because they're more in tune with their emergency at the time. So
yeah, when you're on the radio, there's excuse me, you made me flash back a little bit. I remember in the beginning, kind of fumbling over my words, and I would get messages from the officers saying, dude, you're okay. Like, stop overthinking what you're saying. And, or, others were just, relentless. And, but I think that little bit of, back and forth poking at each other, in moderation, of course, it's just like, having a sibling, and you're poking fun at each other and stuff. And it kind of builds a little bit of that, eventual camaraderie that everybody has when you're working with them for so long. And, but, always right in the beginning, you're just, oh, I can't believe I said that. And then, someone might hit the replay and then you hear it over again. You're like, okay, you can stop now.
that's exactly. They'll sit there and they hit it over and over and over to the point where it sounds like a ringtone. It's like, stop.
Yeah. So, in taking, phone calls and everything, do you remember what your first call was or any of your earlier calls that had come in?
I don't remember my first call. I remember my first thing that stands out to me is my first cardiac arrest. It was a little girl. I still remember her name to this day. I remember she passed away on Mother's Day. And it was, to me, that one was sad to the point where it stands out in my mind. All of them to me are always sad, and you never want something like that to happen. You don't want people to go through stuff like that. But that one particularly stood out in my mind, I guess maybe because it was my first. But the father, he had, like the babies down to go to sleep. He had some other children there with him, and he lay down to take a nap, and the baby was in her bassinet, and when he woke up, the blanket had gotten too close to her face. And so I tried talking him through CPR, and I just remember him over and over again saying, praying to God and asking the little girl to come back, and just kept saying her name over and over. And it is like burned in my head to this day. And that one probably will always stand out to me. As at least,
Yeah, those.
not always in a good way, but it's still, that's the one I remember most of all.
How long were you into your career then? When just like maybe a few months?
3 months.
See, and that's definitely a hard type of call to take, because you're hearing these voices that obviously have stayed with you, and you're able to talk about it, which is good that you're able to talk about it, even though it does stick with you, because there are others who are going to hear this story, whether it be those that you work with or just the audience of this show in general, and they're going to learn from that. They're gonna learn that it isn't the type, and it's it's not the same for everyone. It might be their one and done, so to speak, of calls, because there have been people who, once they take a call like that, they realize, no, this job actually isn't for me. But you've been doing this for 19 years, and there are those who are going to hear this and realize, one, that they're not alone, and two, that they are able to continue and move on past a call like that, and still have kind of a healthy career. In those times that you were taking calls and such, and you said in the beginning that you were moving towards education, but then you started doing this, that you realized it was your calling. Was there a certain moment that you can remember that you thought, this is the job? Was it in the beginning when you were listening to the radios, or was it when you first got in and started actually working that you realized, this is what I've been called to do, this is what I want to do?
Probably after I'd been here for a few months. I was still going to school while I was working here full time, and it was a stint where I worked, and it was as bad to say this, but it was several bad calls, and they were all involving pediatric. It was one choking, one drowning. Of course, I already had the one with the baby on Mother's Day. But several of them, several stints of working those type of calls, and I just, even though it was hard on me to have to take a call like that, I felt like that was something maybe I was called to do. I felt like I wanted to be the one to be here to help them during their time of need, even though to me, I was just during that time, I wanted to be the person that to try to bring them some type of comfort, even though it may not be anything you can say to them, or at least give them the help that they need. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted something that was going to be meaningful, and to know that my callers they knew that there was light at the end of the tunnel, that some help was coming, and I wanted to be a part of that. Even, like I said, even if they may not have the best case, at least they knew someone was there for them to help them answer their phone and listen to them, if nothing else.
It's interesting how each one of those calls dealt with a pediatric type situation like that, right? And when you think about these calls, and those who are watching and listening as well, all life excuse me, is precious. It's all important, but it's something about when it's, an infant or, a kid or something like that, that just, it makes it that much more, I guess, impactful, right? And for you, taking those calls, from these parents, and I guess, just kind of putting yourself really in their shoes, into what they're dealing with, so that you can relate to them, but also help them at the same time. That was your moment. That's powerful to be able to look at that, and just like you said, you wanted to be the one to be there to help them, almost to kind of take what they were dealing with, but projecting that that help as well. You being there to be that calm voice when they're calling, and just really take that situation and and help them with it.
Yes, sir.
So you end up you've been doing this for a while now, and you've got these calls. You found your calling, and you've been doing it ever since then. Do you do as a shift supervisor?
Mhm.
Actually, let me ask this first, because you were doing this, and you had a lot of these harder calls in the beginning. What made you want to move up to shift supervisor?
Well, at first I didn't, and I kind of didn't want the responsibility. I didn't feel like I was ready yet, and so I kind of held back. But then they were needing someone as a sitting supervisor, which is our assistant supervisor, is what it actually is. And so they kind of talked me into, hey, would you mind? You had to, I had the experience. There's some younger people that had come in under us. So I finally took it, and I was the assistant supervisor for many years. But just within this last year, I stepped up to do the supervisor, and I just wanted to make this to me, I started thinking about my children are older now. I wanted to make this my life. I wanted to make sure that I wanted to go further into this. I was looking for growth in the same field. I want to be able to teach others the same thing that I've learned, especially the ones who they come in, they are so fresh, they're so new, they're so excited, have the adrenaline going, kind of refreshes you, especially when you start feeling like burned out on everything. I wanted to be a part of that. I want to be able to teach them how to serve our community and how to be the one that builds up the ladder for everyone else. I want other people to reach their goals. There's other people around here that are wanting to strive for better, especially for the center. They love their job, and I want to be able to be one of the ones that can help them reach their goals here. So,
Isn't it interesting that you were, from what it sounds like, starting to reach a little bit of a burnout, but you also said that what refreshed it was the fact that you had made this jump, and you've got all of these fresh faces coming in, and by teaching them, it just completely reignited your love for this industry.
it does. It's special whenever you get to help and participate with the training aspect. And we have CTOs on our shift, and I'm a CTO as well, but I don't get to do that as much now since I'm a supervisor. But watching our CTO and helping them whenever I get a chance to, and working with these people one-on-one and teaching them the stuff that I was taught, it refreshes you, and it helps open your eyes. Like, this is why I got in this business for. This is why I wanted to do this, and why I stuck with it all these years.
That's amazing, because I have found that, and it's true for my story as well. I hit my burnout at the last center that I was at, where I finished off my dispatching career about 6.5 years in, at that center. And I didn't know, I wasn't sure what else to do. Like I loved the job, but there was a toxic environment, county politics, just a lot of crazy stuff that was going on that just made it kind of bad. The morale was down. Um, but what reignited it was for me going back to school and working on projects that were focused on 911 dispatch. And a good friend of mine, his name's Rob. He ended up losing his job as a director at a center, and went through some dark times, and ended up being brought in as an interim director, and was showing them all types of stuff that they had not even known about, like the 911 organizations, and different resources and all this other stuff. And it's a story similar to yours in a way, where it reached that point, that burnout point, but what reignited was actually the job. The one thing that you're getting burned out from is actually what ends up saving us, in that same sense, because we're now doing it from a different angle. And for you, it was showing, it's people coming in and, really kind of molding that next generation of 911. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So when you see the new people come in, and their faces, when they see the different monitors or how people are working, do you ever kind of chuckle to yourself and think, I remember that moment?
Oh yeah, most definitely, especially when they come in and they see it looks like NASA Space Center with all the monitors. We have 8 on our supervisor console, and then they have 6 on everyone else's, and they're like, I'm supposed to work that? So it's quite amusing.
So I think at the last center I was at, we had 5, maybe 5. So you say the supervisors have 8. If you can say, what are some of what's on 8? Is it just like the CAD and like phone and like texting, or that's a lot of monitors?
We have our telex radio on 1, and then we have our phone, and then we have our CAD, we have our CAD map, we have our EMD, and then we have our radio. But we also share on all that, our texting, our translate, and our rapid on all those screens. So we've got a lot to work with, a lot to deal with.
Oh man. How many of these do you have for a console with 8 monitors?
One keyboard and one we have, when it comes to our mouse, we have 2 and 1 keyboard.
Oh, so that's not bad at all. I asked because there are some centers that I've been to where you've got multiple monitors and there's like 2 keyboards and 3 mice. I'm like, how do you even know which one you're going to when you're that moving that fast? And of course, they're labeled, but you don't always read, so it's all just muscle memory, really. So I guess staying on that topic then here, how has technology changed in your 19 years in this industry?
Goodness, greatly. We had, usually when I first started, it was just a wireless that was coming through. Then we went to phase 2. Now we have Texi, of course, Rapid, Google Translate. I mean, thank goodness we got that. And mainly our Texi and Rapid are the 2 that we use now that I wish we could have had years ago, especially when it comes to people needing help. They can't talk. At least through Texi, they're able to communicate with us. I've had one not too long ago who was involved in a high-speed chase. He was not the one driving, but he wanted to make sure the cops knew that he was in the back seat, and he was not the one who was doing what was being done. he wanted to make sure that the cops knew he was innocent. He was just being forced to ride. So, but it was weird. We kept getting hang up calls from him, and we kept trying to call back, and they kept hitting us to voicemail. And then next thing I know, we're getting a text from him, and we're able to communicate. Apparently, he was trying to do it on the down low. He didn't want the guy knowing he was texting 911. So that actually ended up working out pretty good in the end. But stuff like that you never would have thought years ago that we could do something like that. So it's greatly appreciated now. And when we lose it, or if we ever lose it, I'm sure it's going to be detrimental to us.
Right. And so what was it like though when you first heard about the fact that you were going to be, implementing texting? And the reason I ask is because there was a center that I went to train a whole center of dispatchers and call takers, and no one likes change, right? And I remember I remember some of the like the deputy director ended up saying to me, I have a feeling that our more seasoned dispatchers and call takers will not like this at all, and the younger ones that are here and newer ones are going to love it. Well, I started doing the training and it was flipped. The younger and newer ones did not want anything to do with it. The more seasoned ones, at least at that center, they were testing it out and trying it and laughing and doing all this stuff. And I look over at the deputy director and he's like, oh, okay. What was it like for you though?
I'm one of those people. I don't deal well with change at all, by no means. And when they first told us we were going to have to do it, I'm like, probably the same way as some of the younger people were thinking at that point in time. I got to learn something different. I've got to learn something new. Don't I have enough going on right now? When it comes to call taking and dispatching. But I know there's people that knows more about all this stuff than I do, and you just have to trust them. And sure enough, it's a godsend. Thank goodness we got it. I don't know what I'd do without it now, but it's one of those things you just have to trust in it and go along with it and see what happens. And thank gosh, if it wasn't for it, I don't know, it'd make our job harder if we didn't have it. I don't know how we did it for so many years without it. So
yeah, I think one of the things that also scared a few people, and I say this too because I had to kind of explain it, well, not so much explain it, but kind of talk through with a few folks on a couple things. It was that human factor, that gets taken away, because a lot of times, well, all the time when you're on the phone, if it's an open line, what are you doing? You're listening to the entire environment to see what might be going on, because it could go from just someone who is playing on the phone to an unknown situation with an open line. It could be anything, but you're listening to all of that. But when it's texting, you have nothing to listen to. It's just whatever is coming in and going back and forth. So that element gets taken out. On top of that, people thinking, well, we're going to be overwhelmed. There's going to be,
that's what
we're going to,
thought.
yeah. And then it turned out
we were going to have a lot of children or people playing on the phone, and it was going to overwhelm us. And surprisingly, we have not had that problem whatsoever.
I think with that, a lot of people ended up realizing, and of course, as long as there's a good, public education campaign as well that goes along with it, they realize that this is to be utilized for those like emergency situations where it's going to make it worse to make an actual phone call because you don't want someone to hear you, or something to that effect. That it's used as a special situation or last resort. It's not supposed to take precedent over voice, because that is the best, always. So with that, that's how people have been using it, and that's why it hasn't been overwhelming.
Yes, sir. And most definitely, that's one of the things that we had a lot of, especially seasoned dispatchers, afraid that it was going to overwhelm us already with us having a high call load, that we were going to be overwhelmed with all these prank calls, these playing on the phone, and surprisingly, we have not had that whatsoever. And people are using it like they're supposed to, and they've actually been having success whenever they're having to call and get for help. So it's been working out good.
That is excellent. And just because, it just proves that, the technology that's coming in is actually working and is helping to that ultimate goal of getting that person help. Or making it so that you're not using so much resources, especially on a 911 hang up call or something to that matter. But as we're on technology here, I want to add another piece of this, and before we go into the wrap up of this episode, I want to look at Hurricane Sally really quick. Now, this was a pretty crazy event to happen. I remember seeing some video from in digital that they had, and also that your deputy director Dan had as well, on the hurricane coming in, and all these calls that are popping up, but also text sessions. So with this going on, I mean, what was that like for you while this was going in, because you got called into this, right?
Yes, sir. I didn't actually work the actual hurricane. They called us in relief, the group that did, and they seemed like they had a very overwhelming night. There are some that were on console. From what I heard, 21 hours at least. Some of them were, because it was just mass chaos. And of course, the weather was so severe that they were taking turns going back and forth. So we came in to relieve them. And it's still, the call load was, pretty significant when we came in. And this was one of the first hurricanes that we all worked together with our new administration. And I think they did a great job in trying to get us the help that we needed. They called in the TURT team to come and give relief to those dispatchers who had to work and go through the ordeal. It was something new. And once again, nobody likes change. Trying to figure out, that we'd never had the TURT team called in for us before. So we were having to get them trained to know our way we dispatch and how our units respond. But with them, they were awesome. They were phenomenal. They jumped right in. They gave us relief. Gave us a chance to play catch up, go check on our families. We were able to check on our homes and all. But I think our administration really did a good job on trying to make sure that people was taken care of. And I don't know, that could have been a lot worse for us, but I think they did a great job.
And sometimes, some of those, the aftermath is worse. Not all the time, but sometimes, the aftermath of a storm like this, or any other situations that are going on, it's that cleanup. Afterwards, you still have, like you said, this call load that's coming in. You're trying to train other people at the same time that all of this is going on, but of course, you get that relief, and it's good to see everyone come together as one unit and do what needs to be done. What types of calls, I guess, in this aftermath, as you're coming in, what types of calls were coming in still? Was people that were, trying to find other family members, or, the houses, destroyed, or, what types of stuff were coming in during that time?
We had a lot of calls for trees and power lines that were down. A lot of people were trying to cross the roads, but the power lines were down, which was causing a hazard. But some of them were still alive. We had a lot of flooding in the areas. We are prone to a lot of flooding anyway when it comes to heavy rains in our area, much less when you have a hurricane come through. The waters rise along the rivers, and we have a lot of like rescue. We may need to send someone out to go and get someone. We did have some people who were trying to swim in it, and there were some others that were trying to get to their home to check to see what the damage was like instead of waiting for the waters to subside. They were getting stuck and stranded then, and were having to call for help. So we were having to send our units out in the weather when they really shouldn't have been going out either. And just your normal EMS calls, believe it or not, there were a lot of, and maybe some of it was brought on by stress for a lot of them, but there was a lot of EMS calls that were going on, just like every normal everyday calls that you have. The chest pains aren't going to stop. The strokes aren't going to stop. So you're still going to have that type of stuff going on. And then we had the structure fires as well because of the power lines and the shortages and the lightning strikes and things like that when it comes to. So we had a lot of stuff going on during that time.
And that's one of the things that I think the general public doesn't always understand, right? When something big is going down, it's not just that's going down. Everything else is still going. Everyone's lives are still continuing. 911 does not stop with only one person's emergency or one incident. I remember having to tell people a few times, and not in like a jerk way, just letting them know the reality of the situation, that your emergency isn't the only one that's going on right now. You hear the phone ringing, there's more that are coming in. There's still more people that need help. And a lot of the times, people would say, mine isn't that much of an emergency. Now, it was rare that people would say that, but they would, some of them would say, mine isn't that much of an emergency. I can hold. But others, you would put on hold to get another phone line, and you would say, do you have an emergency? And they would say, well, yeah, I'm calling 911. Like, okay, what's your emergency? Well, I locked my keys out of my car. Do you have a child in there? Or, is something else that's going on? And they would say, no. Like, okay, yours is not an emergency at the moment. So what, I got to get to work. I understand. I have someone who has a medical issue right now. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. Go ahead and go.
That's right. That's what usually, everything that's going on, they don't realize there are bigger emergencies until you kind of bring it out to them and say, look, this person is having chest pain. Like you said, the keys lost in the car, that's something that can wait. And now there are some people who, well, they're insisting that there's this bigger emergency, but you have to treat every one of them.
Yeah, then it's up to us to be like, well, we're also triaging, and I have to put you on hold.
I know.
So as we go into the wrap up here of this episode, it's been amazing to have you on and talk and learn more about you. Thank you so much for being on. When you look back on your 19 years in public safety, what is one thing that you're, I guess, most grateful for?
The experience that I've got when it comes to the community, working with them. I'm grateful for them giving me a job to begin with. This has been, I feel like I would have been missing out if I had never gotten this job. It's been a whirlwind of events. It's been fun. It's been sad. It's been hard, but I couldn't imagine doing anything different. This definitely is my calling, and this is what I'm grateful for. A family, because when it comes to working with these people up here, they're just an addition to my family now. I live up here. They all know that. They pick on me about it, and I see them just as much as I do my family. And, we all get along, we all, laugh and joke, but then we also are there for each other when we need to be, whenever it gets hectic or crazy, or when one of us is down about the job. We're always there to help pick each other up. So I guess I'm really grateful for having an additional family.
Amazing. Well, thank you so very much for being on this episode, and sharing more about you, and the calls that you took, what it was like for you in the beginning, and especially there as well about Hurricane Sally, and just overall your awesome career that you've had. Thank you so much for being on. I usually only have the one question, but I actually at the end, but I want to ask you one more, only because of what you shared off in the beginning, and because you continue to love this job. For anyone who is out there who might have taken a call similar to yours, those first three in the beginning, with children and all, what advice might you have for those who have taken a similar call and are, really thinking about, continuing on? Like, how did you continue on through from that time?
I had someone who was my trainer, Sandy,
Mhm.
who sat me down and talked to me about it. I never am really one that likes to open up about any of my calls, or usually I try to keep my emotions kind of tucked away. But she could tell that it was bothering me, and just being able to have someone to talk to about it and talk you through it, and realize that you're there to help them in their time of need, that you are their relief, even though it may only be just to hear them and their problem and send the correct people to them. I couldn't imagine getting through that without her talking to me and talking me through all that. So I definitely having someone who you trust, or, even seek your supervisor, say, hey, do you know someone I can go talk to if you're having problems like this? So you're thinking, this is affecting you in a negative way. You definitely want to try to get help from someone.
Perfect. Thank you again very much for being on. It has been an honor to have you here and learn more about you. And thank you for the job that you do.
Thank you.
Now, I will be right back here with you. And for those who are watching right now and listening, of course, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy. And if you're looking for any bonus content, as I mentioned in the beginning, you can check us out again, and that's going to be patreon.com/WTT podcast. Thank you to all the patrons for everything. I appreciate it more than you know. And this can be seen on Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube. And you can hear it 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. This episode also has been an InDigital exclusive episode. So thank you all very much, and I will see you in the next one.